Welcome back. Pete Nakos on 3.com, who's one of the world's leading NIL experts. So I think that's what, when you go on CNN, that's what that need to introduce you as, Pete, because you are one of the first in the space to have to dive full into it and learn about it. And obviously House versus NCAA could change a lot of aspects of NIL. What do you think will be the path that schools and collectives start to take?
Well, thanks so much for having me on, and happy Friday and happy Memorial Day weekend. The path that I see coming is, I think, obviously you're going to have revenue sharing, but there's obviously going to be caps on the amount of money that schools can share to teams through revenue sharing. And just like anything, schools want a competitive advantage, and the way that we have that is going to go through third-party collectives. These NIL collectives that we know so well, they're not going anywhere, and they're going to continue to provide the competitive edge for the leaders of college football, right? To continue to use to attract and retain talent.
Pete, what was the most interesting, part about all this kind of coming together for you? Is it the fact that schools will now be directly involved? Is there another aspect maybe that you're curious about that hasn't been answered yet? What just kind of, piques your interest the most?
Yeah, I mean, obviously revenue sharing with athletes is completely unprecedented. But beyond that, guys, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that a lot of college football fans would want to know. What role are collectives going to play? What is my team going to have to do to win on Saturdays off the field? What is college football going to look like for the next 10 years? I think a lot of the questions that fans want to know are still completely unanswered. And beyond that, I mean, I know everyone's making a big to-do with the settlement, and it is a landmark moment. Don't get me wrong. But beyond that, I mean, yet again, here we go. They're going to go back to Congress and try to get something done, and they need it to happen for most of what's in the settlement to actually work.
Pete, so with collectives still, because they're not going to go anywhere, even though I know that the NCAA kind of foolishly hopes that this will eliminate them in a lot of places. So if I'm the Notre Dame collective and Notre Dame has – this money they distribute, and quarterbacks worth, say, $250,000. That's what they allocate, which, again, we don't know these details. But you really only have, say, $90,000 to allot to him in particular. The collective will then go get you the other $160K a year?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I envision it. And, I mean, man, you know it just as well as I do. These athletes, a starting five SEC and Big Ten quarterback are making roughly $800,000 to $1 million. I can promise you that if they're only going to make, I don't know, $100,000 to $200,000 in a rev share, maybe at most $400,000, they're going to want the other $600,000. Not everyone's going to just be going back to the way it was. I mean, they gave them part of the cookie. They want all the cookie now. It's not. Things are not just going to rewind.
Pete, I saw you had a post about a player who was apparently asking schools for six figures a month now. I was just curious, it was the Wild West before. It's still untamed. There's lots of questions, as you pointed out. Have the demands from the part of players, from just what you've heard and been able to report on whatnot, has that started to change? Or are there more guys expecting more because of all the stuff that's in the news? Has it kind of started to average out? I mean, how would you describe sort of the demands on the part of players now and kind of how we've seen that since the beginning of NIL?
The guy I was talking about was probably one of the top 10 guys in there. So by no means did not deserve it, but at the same time, six figures a month is ridiculous. Yeah. I think that things have definitely kind of smoothed out, and I think a lot has to do with the fact that most of your high-end collectives that we all think about when we talk about collectives mostly, I mean, they're pretty formal now. They know what they're doing. Not everyone's Jaden Rashada in Florida. But beyond that, the other thing I think people need to realize too half the time, it has nothing to do with the athlete. So many agents out here who are trying to make a couple dollars off a kid and things like that. So always have to take that into account when we're talking about things like this.
Pete, with this, obviously with the ruling is going to change a lot of things, but do you think that pre-ruling that you mentioned the collectives, like most of them have kind of got their ducks in a row, that there are, I mean, there's always going to be bad actors, but there's less people who don't know, their butt from a hole in the ground when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, and you look at it, right, there's probably like, I'd say like 30 to 50 of them are really good, and they're all part of this association called the Collective Association. Mm-hmm. And I mean, man, they want to be looked at as like real people in this college athletic sphere. They're not trying to like run away from the NCAA. They want to be part of the solution. I mean, I reported in a story today, I already know of 2 SEC schools at the very least who are definitely exploring ways to bring their collectives in-house or make them a huge part of how they're going to share their revenue. So yeah, I mean, they're not going away. They're very standard. They're very professional. I mean, I had someone tell me on the phone that like, yeah, duh, obviously the ones operating in their garage aren't going to be around anymore, but like, I feel like that should be a given at this point.
How impressed were you? I know you had an article on it, but how impressed were you by Memphis stepping up to the plate with that FedEx sponsorship, and just how that's going to, as you point out, going to be, more of what's needed, more of the norm in some cases as well, but just what a massive investment that is for Memphis athletics.
Huge. And you look at the rest of the American Athletic Conference, right? USF is definitely on the rise. There's some other ones too, but if you can have $5 million to disperse across your athletic department annually, I mean, that's such a game changer. You know how many SEC schools don't have a corporate sponsorship like that? Like, I'm not saying Memphis is about to win the national title in football or basketball, but just what a jumpstart that gives for a program.
Pete, you mentioned Jaden Rashada earlier. How much of a cautionary tale will that be for people now? Because Billy Napier really has got himself kind of out over his skis.
Yeah, I think the cautionary tale there is just if you're an athlete, know what kind of contract you're signing. I mean, $13 million, like I don't know how likely it was he was ever going to get that payment to begin with. Beyond that, though, I think it's also a really cautionary tale to collectives to. I mean, this is the real world. We're not playing like college like NCAA 04. I mean, this is real deal. You're going to offer real dollars. You're going to be expected to live up to those payments. And yeah, if you're not going to do it, I mean, there's definitely going to be some penalties. And in this situation, obviously, Rashada's accusing Billy Napier of fraud and betting and things along those lines. And I mean, these are some serious accusations. At the end of the day, right now, though, they are accusations, so don't want to put the cart in front of the horse and say Billy Napier's gone or anything. But, yeah, I mean, he's alleged of some pretty serious things that we're going to have to see how it all plays out.
With these things coming in-house, do you believe that we'll see contracts that will prevent transfer portal movement, or that transfer portal outs will have to be very specific now in those contracts?
I think that's a great question that I don't have the answer to. I think that the way the transfer portal operates right now is not going to change until we get collective bargaining. And the reason is you cannot really put caps on how athletes can and can't move around, as we've seen the NCAA lose in the courtroom already. I mean, I know that this was such a huge win for athletes in getting the share of revenue, and I'm never going to talk down about that because that's never happened in the 100+ years of college sports. But beyond that, guys, you also need to look at the fact how athletes were not involved in these discussions at all, and I think that is going to continue to be a problem for the NCAA moving forward until that really happens.
Pete, I know that Andy Staples got to go play the video game the other day. Are you jealous?
Man, don't even get me started. We were on the phone yesterday before I went on a show again today, and man, I'll just tell you guys this, like, and it's not sharing too much, but like he just talked about how realistic it was, and we saw it in that trailer that's already been released. But he was like, he played play now, from my understanding, and he had an opportunity to play at Penn State and stuff. And I mean, I know the images are already out there, but he said the sound effects to go with it and everything are top notch. And it's just so good for college football to be back. And you know, the other thing that I don't think enough people talk about, and I'm going to try to do some reporting on, is we all know who Denard Robinson is at Michigan, because I know he was a good quarterback, but he's also was on the cover of the game. Like that makes such a big impact on the publicity for an athlete, and I think it's only going to do good things for the game as a whole.
Well, I just think for their future prospects. Like, look, if nothing happens with Donovan Edwards the rest of his football career, he'll have that, and that's going to be a thing he can always be like, hey, like he'll be able to go do conventions because of that stuff. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
Yep.
Well, Pete, enjoy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully no gigantic legal stories break over the time, so you can at least have a relaxing weekend. And I know that you've been crazy busy the last few days, so certainly appreciate your time hopping on with us.
You bet. Have a great day, guys.
Pete Nakos, on3.com. So